Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the one and only Versace Stoner. We're having a special episode of VSW. Tonight, we have the missus with us. Come on in. Come on in. She'll be here to ask her five. And we have a very special guest tonight, the one and only. Someone I look up to all the time when I listen to NCW wrestling, the one and only Atlee Greene. Welcome.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, of course, of course. Like I said, I've been probably hearing you now since about 2017, I feel.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while off and on, but around 2019 it became consistent.
Yeah, definitely. And that's probably when I say 2017, that's when I kind of came around to the indie scene. I probably didn't start, unfortunately, paying super attention until 2019, which was kind of my downfall because everything I got excited for came to a crashing end in the beginning of 2020.
Of course.
I was at that season open. I was waiting for that like NC-17 show, all this stuff going on. Like the next day, there was like nothing. Everything fell flat.
Oh, yeah, I was putting on a charity show right before that everything came down. And the day my job closed, I got a phone call saying, okay, we can't have any wrestlers from out of state wrestling on the show. And then they tell me you can't have any wrestlers that are not from the North Shore on the show. And then eventually they cancel the show altogether.
Yeah, like nobody can come.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like I said, it was a terrible time. I saw a lot of people kind of just stop suffering. Um, it was also right before Mania. A lot of people around here were getting booked out there. For Mania weekend with all the indie shows, and that all came to an end. Everybody was at standstill. But it gave me a good opportunity to meet people too. People were around. People were here. I got to talk to people and that's kind of what also lured me deeper into the indie scene. Not only by wanting to help, because I'm seeing I'm listening and seeing now the real people talk about their struggle with not being able to wrestle on the weekends, whether it's the extra money or more importantly just the love of the sport not happening and not knowing what to do. Especially people that have been wrestling for like 15, 20 years. It's like now there's nothing. No, I wanted to support, so I did, a lot of stuff with buying merch and all that. And then when, it came back in 21, I was just on like full steam ahead everywhere. But when did you actually get into wrestling itself?
I got into wrestling. I've always been a wrestling fan since I was 7 years old. And I remember the first episode of wrestling I ever saw was an episode of WWF Wrestling Spotlight the nights before the inaugural SummerSlam. And I didn't have cable at the time, but I just had to see this match, and I just begged my neighbor, "Hey, can I watch SummerSlam? I know you watch wrestling," and never looked back. But as far as getting into wrestling,
What, if you don't mind me asking, what SummerSlam was that?
'88.
88. See, I'm a big fan of 88, 89. Those two to me, and 90 actually too. Those three to me were just very, really well done. I like the Ravishing Rick Rude storyline. I was a big fan of Zeus coming in 89. I liked Macho Man as the bad guy. I thought that was really nice. Something about those SummerSlams and the theme music for those really grabbed me as well. Um, I just always like to know what people SummerSlam like, because then you hear people that be like, oh, later on down the line. But those 80 pay-per-views, man, they're unrated. They're underrated. I feel.
Oh, they're definitely classic events, underrated by today's standards, but when you remember them from the lens of being a kid at the time as opposed to analyzing them now as an adult, they're just cherished memories that you're never going to forget.
Yeah, and I mean, not for nothing, I could watch the same matches now with my son, who's about 6, and he will probably mark out, appreciate, love everything about it because, again, at the time, it's the larger than life characters and you're not overanalyzing. You're not worrying, what's logistical, does this make sense? At 6 years old, it doesn't matter. All that matters is does it excite you?
Oh man, there are times where I wish I could go back to being the type of fan where the only thing I knew about wrestling is what I saw on the screen. None of the backstage news, none of the inside stuff from being involved in the business, because that was truly the funnest of times as a wrestling fan.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, even for just a band that like didn't get, really into the business, but I've learned a lot over the years. They kind of broke that, around my high school year when they came out with stuff like Beyond the Mat and all these people were trying to it just broke down all the walls. And for me, it was like, granted, we knew some of this stuff and some of it made sense, but just to see it put that way was like, it's like the death of Santa Claus here. And then you start to look at things a little different. Now you're looking at it as a business and an industry. Oh, that's why that's happened. Oh, this. And then you start to learn more and more. Like you said, like somebody once told me, whoever's usually setting up the table is usually the one going through it. It's like, okay. So now I look for that spot. When I see him, like, oh, he's going through it. Okay. And granted, it's like, like I said, a magic showing its tricks, but it's also like I wish I could go back and just be a dumbfounded fan and be, dazzled by the kayfabe of wrestling. And that's what I kind of like to do even on my show. When I bring on wrestlers, I like to stay in their world, their realm, whatever, their character, whatever they are, be it, do it. So I like to be in that fantasy because, when I go to a wrestling show, I don't know about you or other people, but for me, it's kind of an escape, right? It's Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. It's the end of a long work week. You know, a lot of stuff is coming to an end. It's a great way to get out with friends and escape the reality and get into the wrestling world.
No, absolutely. I mean, I talk about wrestling from like the insider perspective as much as the next guy, but I'd always rather talk about, the front facing aesthetic, the things going on in front of the camera. Like we just saw at NCW, the main event for WrestleFest 19 is going to be a triple threat match: Johnny Pierce, Stephen Lust, and the Ace Mike Montero. And that match to me is very intriguing for a variety of reasons because you have Mike Montero and Stephen Lust, probably the two best individual singles wrestlers in NCW today. And then you have Johnny Pierce, who's this colossus of raw power, who's definitely going to be the X factor in that match. And even if they can somehow get Johnny Pierce down and out, Mike Montero still has to worry about Stephen Lust. Stephen Lust still has to worry about Mike Montero. And that's a fascinating story to me.
It
Um,
is.
and so I'd rather
Johnny
talk about that
Pierce.
stuff any day.
Yeah, I mean that. Again, I mean Johnny Pierce is honestly an X factor in all of this, and he's come a long way himself when he first debuted. He first debuted here and there. Now I'm seeing him like almost everywhere. And, he's kind of dominating out there. He was very impressive in the Rumble. He took out a few guys, which means that he can handle more than one person, which gives him almost an advantage in a triple threat match because you do got two opponents coming at you. And Johnny is the marked man going in. He's the one that ruined that last match. For anybody that was there, you'll see that, at the end of the match, Johnny came in and he basically chokeslammed, I forget which one, but one of them threw the other one through the table.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. I even though I was ring announcing that show, I forgot where I was during the Stephen Lust Mike Montero match where I forgot I was a professional working the show and I was just so immersed into the work they put in that match. And once Johnny Pierce did his thing with the choke slam through the table and the match was called a no contest, for a few minutes, I was legitimately upset at Johnny Pierce for ruining such a great match until I realized, okay, Atlee, remember where you are, remember what you're doing. But still, the fact that you could still be taken out of it and brought back to that fantasy land for just a few seconds is just awesome.
Well, plus you got JC Mox over there screaming, "What the hell did you do, Johnny? What the hell are you doing? Get the hell out of here!" And just little nuances like that, though, just make a show, and it makes it entertaining. That show, was the first time I brought my son. Me and my wife have been, like I said, coming probably steadily since it was maybe 2018, right?
And your mother-in-law
But
too.
this time I brought the mother-in-law, I brought my son, brought the whole family out there, and they were all impressed and intrigued.
And they all cannot wait to come back.
Yes, my son got lucky and actually won the WrestleFest ticket, so now we have to come back.
Everybody's coming
Well, I
back.
was going anyways, but yeah, to backtrack a little bit, I know we got sidetracked. So you would say, you're always a fan, and I always like to, most anybody you ask is usually a fan. I think I was talking to somebody the other day, like, the only person I think I talked to on air was Becca, and she's the only one that said she didn't grow up watching wrestling. But most people, for the most part, start off with some kind of fandom. They see it on TV. They say, "Well, I like it. How do I do it?" Um,
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, I became a mega fan from day one. Bought all the figures, bought all the posters, had to see every show, you name it. And even like when my friends kind of fell out of wrestling, like the early teen years, I still stayed in it. It was just like my favorite thing. But I didn't think about actually becoming a wrestler until I was 16 years old. And I was literally just after a wrestling practice in high school. I was sitting in my room and there's April vacation. I was like, what do I want to do with my life after high school? And then I'm just staring at a poster of Bret Hart. And I was just like, that's it. I'm going to try to be a wrestler. Much easier said than done. But I just always remember that moment as when I decided I was going to be a wrestler. And then once I had that moment, though, nothing else really mattered. Like, just nothing, like no um, social scene in high school, popularity or whatever, nothing mattered except just trying to do what I could to prepare myself for, a wrestling career. And I went to a few fantasy camps. I almost went to a couple different wrestling schools in different parts of the country, but they always fell through for one reason or another.
yeah, no, I get that. I had similar upbringing. High school for me, it was wrestling was very big at the time. It was Monday Night was raging on. Wrestling was the talk of the town. We were all at the right age for like the attitude era, all the sex, everything. So everybody was really into it, from like teachers to students. Like I was able to write my senior thesis, not my senior thesis, but my senior evolution project on the evolution of WWE. Like they allowed that. It was that mainstream that things were going on with wrestling. So of course I wanted to be a wrestler. ECW was popping off. People were doing backyard matches and having fun with barbed wire and stuff. I wanted to do it. I really did. I went to the school. The only school that I knew of was the Killer Kowalski school. I went in there, and me being barely 18, like 5'8", 140 something pounds, they're like, you're not really going to be a wrestler. Like this is not really what we're looking for. And so I got, I left. That was it. I didn't give up on wrestling, but at that point I was all like, okay, I can't be a wrestler because I get it. I'm not, I'm no Hulk Hogan size. I'm no Andre the Giant size. I'm no King Kong Bundy. And these were all the people that I grew up with. Now, granted, over the years, wrestling has evolved and changed. Now the little man, you can be a BRG. You can be somebody like that size, be successful. It's more inclusive than ever. But at the time, it really wasn't. They were still looking for that large man, wrestler, ruthless aggression, Brock Lesnar was just popping. They wanted muscle mass, and I wasn't that person. I went boxing though, because I figured boxing, I could do it in my own weight class. I could have a little fun with it. And I took some time off wrestling altogether. I didn't watch anything, didn't really get into it until around 2016 when I started seeing stuff with the Wyatt family. And that kind of lured me back in because the storyline, the storytelling. And then I went to indie shows, and that's when I really had the passion again. Because when I went to the indie show, I stepped in. My first indie show, I'll say, was Dead of Mass. It was an NCW show. Anthony Green was there, or Everett was there. MSP was there with, I forget who else. Mike Montero, I believe, captured the U.S. title, or the mid-card title at the time. Forget what event it was exactly. I was just blown away by the character work that was done. People like Dick Lane, people like Mike Montero with the Dirt City Murder Crew. At the time, was Detox. Because when I went to indie wrestling prior to that, these were like charity events almost. So they would give, the police were giving tickets away, and I'd go, and there'd be nobody notable except maybe like the honky tonk man, somebody they were bringing in. But the regular day-to-day workers were like nobody special, so you never remember them. But now I come into this indie scene, and it was only like $10 tickets to get into NCW at the time. And I'm seeing these great characters and bright colors, and I'm like, wow, this scene here is only missing $1 million, for the production. Everything else about it is legit. Like the wrestling is really something, and I got really invested into that indie stage.
No, that's the great thing about independent wrestling, because it's a more intimate experience for the fans, and plus you're dealing with lower budget production, so you don't have fireworks, you don't have a large stage, you don't have a large arena full of thousands of people. Uh, that means the action inside the ring, on the microphone, and on the mat has to count more than most in order to not only keep the fans engaged but keep fans from coming back. And I think promotions like NCW is a real testament to how well they've done that, because again, I've worked for NCW off and on for over a decade, and the fact that their audience has grown in that decade just speaks volumes.
And I mean, not another, I believe I did the math and I talked to JC, and I believe as a single name company, NCW is the longest running. Top Rope technically wins it, but they changed names from Yankee Pro over to Top Rope.
Yeah.
But NCW has been running 20 plus, something plus years. They've been running a very long time and very dedicated. And they've had some of the greatest talent, even TV talent, come through there. So like you said, it is a testament of what goes on, no matter the budget. If the stories are done right, if the wrestling done right, it will be a success.
Dedication is the key word that you just said when it comes to NCW and JC Mark specifically, because that dude is so dedicated to what he does. He has been dedicated for a very long time. And even though he sometimes likes to say that, oh, I'm wavering a little bit, as far as participation, you can't tell based on how he produces the shows, because he's into it as ever.
Yeah,
And
every show he says it might be his last, but every show gets better and better. So I'm like, what are you
of
doing?
course. And
But
plus, there's every show. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, that's fine. Go for it.
But usually in every area or region in the country, you have most independent promotions that are rather picky about who they use. And then you have promote one or two promotions that they want to give young guys a shot, because they want people got to start somewhere. The promoter realizes that, and this is a place to kind of earn your keep, make your bones, and get better and get reps in. And there are so many wrestlers that JC is even either giving them their first match or giving them like their first real run with significant match time and ring time and storylines and
Oh
whatnot. So
yeah.
there's a lot of people that owe JC a debt of gratitude.
I'll be honest with you. Part of the reason I also love the indie scene is because I get to see the come up. And there was people, like I said, like when I first came on the scene, BRG wasn't winning very much anywhere else, but he was world champion in NCW, and he was doing a hell of a job being that heel. Everybody hated him. He was annoying. He was Bieber. And he took that to the next level, and he got where he needed to go. Channing Thomas is another name. He became world champion. He became tag champion. He made a name out there, He got to the next level of wrestling. When I went to the last show before the pandemic, I saw somebody called Basic Becca. She's transformed herself 360 degrees to a pop superstar. And when I saw her that day, she looked like an 80s gym instructor with a very basic gimmick. She has done such work and moved such on, but again, she's walked through those doors. I've seen, chaotic kids coming through there to work their matches, Ricky Smokes, Cashew. It really doesn't matter. I've even seen, other people come back and work. AG comes back, and he's world renowned, and he'll come back and work the JC too. And I love seeing that though, because I have been told that JC will give those people a chance. Some of the newest students, they're ready for a rumble, they're ready for a match. JC is willing to let them try, and that's a lot, because without any opportunities, let's face it, you're not going to get any.
Oh, of course. Everybody has to start somewhere. And there are promoters who, have only been in the game like a handful of years that won't give new people a try. But you got JC, who's been there and done that for over 20 years that will still give new people a try. And that's just a testament to how, as you mentioned, how dedicated he is to the business.
And I think that's something that I really like about the whole NCW vibe is that, it's a long-standing company. They have a nice reputation. It's known, but they're not over aggressive about things. They don't over aggressively market. They don't try to tear anybody down. They just run the show consecutively and consistently as they would any other thing. They don't try to, work anything else out. And that's just so successful because they're just worrying about them. You know what I mean? Like, you don't always see that. Sometimes
No,
people make counter moves and they work counter things, and it's like it's one big industry. Just run your show.
no, it's funny you say that because I have worked for promoters where I've seen them literally yell at their wrestlers and just belittle them and dress them down for making the slightest mistake in a match. It could be even a mistake that the fans wouldn't notice, but the trained eye would, and they still just yell at them. I mean, you would have thought they stole something. And JC, where if somebody makes a mistake, he's not going to just go in and start yelling at you. He's going to just talk to you about it. Be okay, like what happened? And you tell him what happened, and then he gives you some notes on how to improve it the next time. And I'll never forget that when I worked, one of the matches I worked for him, I'm not going to mention who it was that I wrestled because I don't want to put any blame on this person because it's not his fault. Probably the worst match I ever had by a mile. And I was told two different things by a couple of people in JC's inner circle. I was told one person in his inner circle told me the match used to go this way. Another person in his inner circle told me the match used to go the other way. And I was just like, okay, which way does this go? And as a result, I overthought it. And as a result, it was a really bad match, entirely my fault. And then JC came back and he's like, hey, so, kind of a rough time out there. What happened? And I explained to him what I just explained to you. And he was like, oh, I apologize for that. I should have told you myself what I wanted and everything. And I never forgot that because I expected him to chew into me, and I wouldn't have blamed him if he did, but he didn't.
That's pretty good. We were talking to a guy the other night, and he was reffing like a Rob Fuller match or something, and he didn't listen to the right guy, and he did something wrong, and Rob Fuller slapped the shit out of him. And he was like, he got slapped the shit out of right in the ring, and he was like, what happened? He's like, you always need to listen to the promoter. But things happen in wrestling, right? And so you did get to a wrestling school, I take it. You did get to a match. You just said you had a match. So you eventually found a wrestling school that could work out.
Yes, I was a member of Slam Tech, the first class of Slam Tech, which is held by Brutal Bob Evans. I started training with him
Nice.
in April of 2000 and had my first match in July of 2000 when I was 19. And then I pretty much worked, every other weekend in the year 2000 for the rest of the year. And then 2021, halfway through, it went from like working, once a month to every other weekend to eventually by the summer of 2001, I was working every weekend and sometimes like multiple times a weekend.
That's great, though. That is great. And you mentioned you've done NCW, I've seen your proving ground, you've done other promotions. What are some of the other promotions you've done, worked for?
I've worked for actually the first promoter I ever worked for was Craig Kaler's promotion. He
Okay.
promoted the EWA, which is different than the one in Maine. This was the Elite Wrestling Alliance, and he was the
Yep.
first promoter I worked for. Bob was the booker and everything. And then I ended up working for Green Mountain Wrestling, the original Green Mountain Wrestling by Gary Langevin.
Okay.
I worked a couple of promotions for Steve Ricard. I
Yep.
like it was either I couldn't keep it straight because it was either South Coast Championship Wrestling or uh, Yankee Pro Wrestling. I think he owned a couple different
Yeah, it
promotions.
switched around a little bit in the beginning of time.
Yeah, and the South Coast Championship Wrestling shows were in a flea market with a nice big ring, but the ring had like no sound when it bumped, so it was kind of in a way anticlimactic when you would take a move or give a move. But again, it was a great opportunity to get experience. I never got to work for any CW. I tried, but just never worked out for one reason or another. But then I started traveling early on with wrestling. I actually got my first out of state gig, not counting like New England, like New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and whatnot. I got a gig in Florida in July of 2001 because of a match that I had for Green Mountain Wrestling. My first match for Green Mountain Wrestling resulted in a booking in Florida, and
Nice.
it was based on, of all things, like how well I sold. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And um, drove down there on my own dime and got $20, and it was a fun time, fun match, great experience, and something I wouldn't trade for anything. And
So, I mean, let's face it, $20 ain't nothing. The ride down there's a loss, but the experience gained, that is really priceless, right?
oh no, absolutely, because I went with a few of my friends that were also either training to be wrestlers or they were already wrestlers. So that was half the fun right there. And then when you get to the locker room, you see all these experienced people that you've never heard of before. And you just kind of feed off their knowledge, listen to them, and kind of see how the camaraderie is in a different area of the country. So that was just experience that you can't pay for.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome though. And just getting out there, I mean, that takes time. A lot of people, they end up, they want to travel, but it just ends up staying local or being a local thing.
Oh yeah.
Which I see now though in the scene is nice because I see a lot of people traveling now, and I see a lot of even out of country work because a lot of promotions are popping up overseas in Germany, Finland, Sweden, all over Europe. You have a lot of promotions, Japan too, and they've been great outlets for guys to go to and be able to go to and work these shows and get that international experience under their belt, which makes a whole difference because then you learn a whole different style of wrestling.
I cannot stress enough how important it is for a wrestler who is serious about either raising their profile or making it to get out there and travel. Uh, Johnny Royal, who also trained me with Bob Evans at Slam Tech, he told me something I'll never forget. He said some of the best professional wrestlers you will ever see are in the independent wrestling scene. But because they don't have the right look, the right connections, or the big one, they simply don't go outside their comfort zone. No one ever hears about them. And there are just people like that all over the country that just, if they would have gone outside of their comfort zone and traveled, they would be on TV instead of some of the names that we see today.
It's wild to think, but it is true. I mean, I'll grant this. I think New England, Northeast, I think we have the best wrestling in the world. I think we have, some of the best promotions, best schools, best teachers, best athletes. I think, we have a really strong foot. Not just take, there's great wrestling all over the country too. I've seen stuff in Texas, West Virginia, Kansas, California, all over those areas as well as, Puerto Rico. They got great wrestling too, but something about New England just stands out. But getting that prestige, getting that growing up, you would see these, we see our heroes in wrestling get to work in a Japan match, and it would be something of like great importance, almost like the president visiting the country, because it'd be something they took very serious, and so would we. And I look at the same way when I see people from New England, like I see AG going to Noah, I see Rip Bison going to Japan, I see Ace Romero going to, Germany to do shows. I see, Channing Thomas now going to Canada. Now, this is a representation of us as well, of New England, as wrestlers, wrestling fan personalities, everybody. And it's great to see that we are represented on that level because we have some of the best talent.
Oh no, absolutely. And I think the reflection of that talent is being able to say that, you were trained by this person, you were trained by that person, because there are more reputable trainers in New England than ever before. Like when I would mention that I was trained by Bob Evans, Johnny Royal, and Sonny Goodspeed, those any one of those three names, their promoter's eye would instantly go up, and I would be taken a little more seriously as somebody they might want to use or eventually use than other people at other wrestling schools. So that was always a big feather in the cap. And as a result, you not only want to just get the booking, but you want to do good for the promoter, but you also want to show them, okay, do your school proud. This is why, they train me. This is why, they put me out there. This is why they have confidence in me and everything. So it's like a lot of honor that goes with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, and they also practice what they preach. I mean, Bob Evans is still on the scene today, working matches, having a good show, putting on decent matches, and still running things sometimes, So, and I just saw he's hosting a seminar, which I honestly advise anybody in the industry to go and listen to him speak, because he's a wealth of knowledge. He
I,
really
I,
knows how to up that game.
my cheap plug for Bob Evans is if you have the opportunity to watch his seminar on how to throw a punch properly, and there's any wrestlers out there that are kind of intimidated when it comes to throwing punches in the ring, watch that seminar, watch that video, and you will, if you're not comfortable throwing punches after watching that, you'll at least be closer to it. So I can't recommend that enough.
Very cool, very cool. I like Bob. He's another person I actually met at NCW. I didn't even realize how known and popular he was because I hadn't watched wrestling for years. But he was selling magazines, and so I bought a bunch of magazines, and I was really hyped about that. My friend's like, "Oh, that's brutal, Bob Evans." I'm like, "Who?" He's like, "Oh, he's been all over the place, like da da." He's listing all the accolades. I'm like, so I go home later, I look up YouTube, I start looking up Bob Evans, and all of a sudden, video. I'm like, "Oh, Jesus." So the next show I go, I buy even more stuff from the guy, and I'm like shaking his hand, I'm getting a photo. I'm like, "Oh, it's Brutal Bob, nice." Um, but that was like the first show I actually met him in. But I've been following him around, just listening to what he says, reading what his posts, and I have to say a lot of the stuff makes sense from a business point of view. It's very smart business.
Oh, absolutely. And Bob is somebody that's really heeds his own advice because he has grown and matured so much, not only just a wrestler, but as a person, over the years. I mean, Bob would be the first one to tell you that he used to have a temper. He definitely used to have a temper. Many brooms would go flying in a locker room or training if things weren't going his way. Not that he was mad about petty stuff, but if somebody is disrespecting the ring, disrespecting the training, or wasting their time and everything, and they weren't about business or they weren't standing on business, he'd get a little mad. But he doesn't do that much anymore. But I definitely remember the temper days of Bob Evans for sure. But it's great to see him calm down and put that stuff all behind him.
Yeah, and I think, just in general, people mature over time and change over time and they adjust and things change for people. Then, the people that entered this industry aren't the same that the people that are in there now when they left. The industry changes them and some of them change the industry. It's a pretty cool thing to see. At this point, I'd like to hand it over to the missus. She likes to give out 5 questions. So good luck on that.
Okay. Okay.
All right, you ready?
I am indeed.
Okay. What's your favorite movie?
The Empire Strikes Back.
Let's see.
I know it's Star Wars. Who's your favorite superhero?
Superman.
Who is the one person that knows you the best?
Without question, that'd be my wife, Juliet. Shout out to my wife who just got her master's in social work. So,
Congratulations.
want to give her a shout out there.
That's awesome. What is your best vacation spot?
Bermuda, without a doubt. Staying in Hamilton, the main city in Bermuda, and just traveling via ferry. There's nothing like it.
Did you swizzle in and swizzle out?
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. And it's funny you said that because on the last day in Bermuda, my first time there, I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find the swizzle in. Could not find it. I don't know what happened. We just got bad directions. No matter where we went, it just wasn't there. And then on the last ferry out of town, I go into the airport. There's this couple sitting behind me, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like, the food in Bermuda is really crappy. It's not what it's all cracked up to be. But there's this one place I went to, and I can't remember the name of it. She digs in her purse. I can hear her digging in her purse. Pulls out some paper, and she goes, "It's called the Swizzle Inn." And my wife and I just looked at each other like, "Are you kidding me?" And it's like it almost felt like a higher power, a god, put them behind us just to torment us.
Who was your favorite actor or actress?
Oh, actor. That's a tough one. I like quite a few of them. Of course, Denzel Washington,
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Hawke,
Mm-hmm.
um, De Niro, Pacino, those guys. That's a tough question because a lot of times it's more about the performance for me as opposed to like the
Mm-hmm.
actor. Like I very rarely watch a movie because like there's an actor in it. Like it has to be a combination of like the story, the actor, and the character for me. But those would be my favorites. And Evangeline Lilly, who is in the Lord of the Rings movies, she's
Yes.
very good at what she
Mm-hmm.
does as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
With the first two, you must have liked Training Day.
oh, without a question, I was an Ethan Hawke fan before Trading Day, and he did that movie Gattaca, which sold me on
Yep.
him.
Yeah,
And
he was good in that.
I don't know how Ethan Hawke wasn't nominated for an Academy Award
Yeah,
in
that
that.
movie was like an incredible movie. People like don't give it enough credit. It's one of those movies I rewatch it almost. I rewatch it a lot if I catch it on whatever it's showing on.
I don't know if I've seen it before.
Really, that's a shame. 'Cause it's a really good movie. You'd probably like it. But it's just one of those things. The story in it and just how the day portrays and just both of them acting off each other was really impressive.
Oh, absolutely, and I don't think one character works well without the other in that movie.
No, and a lot of some of it's kind of like a good wrestling match. Where you got two guys that work off each other, and there's a lot of parallels in wrestling in Hollywood. Not so much. Well, yeah, even in that, the storytelling is told in just different ways. In Hollywood, it's through a lot more, scenery and scenes, but in wrestling, it's told through, fights and moves, and then littler scenes, shorter scenes, where it's kind of the reverse in Hollywood, shorter fight scenes, longer stories. But the principle is still there. You're telling a story, you're portraying, and you're pulling emotions.
That was my five.
That was your five.
Yeah.
I counted.
Good for you. I'm so excited that you came on the show. I was like so excited when Versace told me.
Oh, well, thank you,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
much appreciate that.
But yeah, but like I said, you're on the scene a while. You've been on the scene a while. What's some of your standout matches? What's some match you look back, you look really proud of?
There's a match I had with Maverick Wild in Green Mountain Wrestling that I really stood out to me because I wrestled him during a time where I still wasn't really confident in what I was doing, and the um, the word was always like, if you can't have a good match with Maverick Wild, you don't belong. And I was just so scared I was gonna mess up something, forget something, and everything. And I didn't, and it ended up going quite well, thanks to him. But I think I held my own enough where it definitely came across that okay, he didn't have a bad match with Maverick, so he's going to be all right. I had a couple of matches with Alex Arion, who really helped me my game kind of go to the next level in a way, like really opened my mind as far as you know the application of the craft and everything. Like I was only kind of doing matches one way, and then once I talked to him and he worked with me and showed me another way, I thought I was intimidated of doing matches that way. And then once he showed me how, I was like, really, that's all there is to it. And I just never looked back. Um, One of my standout matches from like a publicity standpoint was the time I wrestled Tony teamed up with Tony Atlas
Nice.
in my high school. We hyped it up as me versus Tony Atlas, and then we did the whole switcheroo where right before we lock up, two heels come out. Sonny Goodspeed and Backstreet Chad come out and make fun of us, make fun of the city of Beverly, and then Tony Atlas takes the microphone and just says, "Hey, Atlee, instead of you and us fighting, how about we team up and teach these guys a lesson?" So I was like, that was pretty cool. And I have a little funny side story about that match. I was promoting the show locally, not literally the promoter, but I was handing out flyers, hanging up
Yeah.
posters, and everything. And I remember I was working at a gym, and I had left my wallet in the gym. So when I was going to catch the bus to go to work the next day, I had no wallet, no ID, just the flyers. And somebody had broken out of Middleton jail, and they were on the run. And as I'm waiting for the bus, two police officers come up to me, and then followed by a cruiser, and they're like, "Hey, you can we talk to you for a second?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Somebody broke out of Middleton jail, and you kind of fit the description." And I kind of rolled my eyes, and they're like, "No, no, 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 no. This isn't racial profiling. This is none of that. You really do fit the description. Do you have any? Can we see your ID?" I go to my wallet, and I'm like, "Oh, that's right. I don't have it." And I'm just like, "I'm really sorry. I have no ID whatsoever. I'll give you anything you want, my name, my social, my address, like anything." And they're just looking like, "I don't know, man. We may have to just take him in until we can confirm who this is." And meanwhile, I'm trying not to be late for work. So finally, as a last ditch effort, I pull out the flyer and I say, um, "This is weird, but I have a flyer with my real name on it for a wrestling show that I'm wrestling on at the high school." And I give him the flyer, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, you're a wrestler? You're wrestling, you're wrestling Tony Atlas at the high school next week?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And and then he just kind of like forgot about the fact that he was questioning a potential escaped convict, and started talking about wrestling and everything. And then in the midst of it all, I missed the bus because we were talking so long, and then he drove me to work and everything. But the funniest thing about that day, besides the police and the flyer getting me out of, being detained, was that when I got home later that day and saw the news story about the escaped convict, I looked at his picture and I said, "Oh my goodness, I would have stopped me too." He looked a lot like me. I was like, I do not blame the police for stopping me one bit.
Like, good thing you weren't him and just didn't pick up the fly and was like, "Hey, I look like this wrestler. Let me play it off."
Oh, exactly. But yeah, that was definitely a standout match. I
And he's still
also
at it too. I just saw him in a spot in a Vacation Land Cup. He took out Sidney Bacabella.
and he's still just as big muscular wise as he was back
Yeah.
then.
It's crazy to see how some of the people, and at some point I think in wrestling, people got out of that rock style mentality and got into, I'm an athlete. I'm not here for longevity. I don't need to just, push the 5 years and get out and do all this harm to my body. People started taking it more serious. People started getting in more shape. People started staying in shape. Tony's like one of those people. He's still in shape. He can still get out there and perform. He still looks good. Um,
And as far as like other standout matches, one of my standout matches because it led to a experience in Japan was a match I worked in 2003 in Louisiana. I went down. My family's from Appaloosas, Louisiana. I went down to Lafayette, and only reason I had my gear with me is because I was too lazy to take it out of my suitcase. It was already in the suitcase. I just threw clothes on top of it, ran to the airport, and all my family wanted to see me wrestle. And I was like, well, someday, you might see me wrestle, blah, blah, blah. And then one of my little cousins comes in with a flyer for a local wrestling show. And they're kind of like, "Oh, you should try to wrestle on the show." And I'm like, "Oh, it doesn't really work like that." And they're like, "Oh, but if we," and wink, wink. And then they're like, "Oh, but if we get like a bunch of people to go, and you tell the promoter that you have 30, 35 tickets that will be sold, they'll definitely let you on the show. And I'm like, you don't understand how this business works. It doesn't work that way. It kind of works that way.
Kind of.
So,
If you're a local fan like that, it kind of does. Yeah.
so I go, and I was hoping they wouldn't use me because I didn't want to wrestle at that time. And they used me. I told them, hey, I'm from Massachusetts, blah, blah, blah. Here's my credentials. I have 35 family members that will pay to get in. And they were like, oh, come on in. And, and the promotion was associated with a gentleman with you ever heard of Rugged Rod Price?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was associated with the promotion. Like sometimes they said that he wasn't the promoter, sometimes they said he was, but it was good to meet him. Big tough guy, and I got to wrestle on that show, and it was odd because I sold so many tickets just on the walk up that they had me go over in that match, and it was weird because I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, so he's like, you sure you want me to to win? And they're like, yeah, definitely. We want you to win. You brought all these people in. You can win. And the guy wrestled while he was a pro and definitely did business. He wasn't too happy about putting me over. But that led to a fingers crossed Hail Mary opportunity in Japan that I'll never forget. And I thought was going to be my last time doing anything in wrestling, which was June of 2004. After that 2-week trip to Japan, I thought that was it. I was content with wrestling. I didn't think it was going to happen anymore until in early 2006, not only did Bob reach out to me to see if I wanted to kind of get back in, but also I met a certain Derek Simonetti.
Yeah. And he would, I think, change the landscape of what New England wrestling is too. He's upped the game. He's upped the ante. He's another trendsetter. What he's done just in marketing and merch alone for Proving Ground, for the people in it, is tremendous.
The best thing I can say about Derek Simonetti and the reason why Proving Ground is doing as well as it is because at the end of the day, Derek wasn't afraid to be Derek. When you get into this business and you learn and you ask for advice about how to do things from the veterans, there's always the tried and true tradition of you have to do things this way, you have to do things that way, and if you don't do things that way, then F you. And most people kind of stick to that because you don't know any other way. Um, Derek was definitely like, while he obviously respects the business, he also is like, but you know what? I'm going to do things my way. And while he definitely had some criticism thrown his way as a result because it was against things he did against the grain, it obviously worked out for the best.
Yeah, I mean, they're another, excellent promotion doing that. And it's another funny story, leading up to that, 2020. I had tickets. I wanted to see the Mike Montero cage match. It was going to be my first time going to Proving Ground. And, at that time, they had the levels. And what sold me, honestly, was the video game like levels, the packaging of the levels, what it looked like, the video game characters. All that stuff just sold me. I hadn't even watched any matches yet, just seen logos. And I'm like, this is already too cool. I need to get and see it. And the pandemic had happened, and I still seen tickets were for sale. So I buy the tickets. And I buy the tickets. I bought actually a Mike Montero figure at the time. He was making custom um, elites, and he had a Mike Montero pistol. So I wanted that. And he reached back to me almost like immediately. He was like, "Just to let you know, that show is going to be canceled." And I'm like, "Yes, I know. I understand the show is going to be canceled. But if and when it comes back, I want to have tickets for that, whatever show it is." So I want the tickets, and I'll just use them when we come back. And I explained that, and he was just telling me, about it. And he talked to me, and we kind of grew a friendship because he was doing the character, making the figure. He had to order the paints. It was a pandemic, kind of hard to get supplies, but he was very good about like keeping contact. A week or so, he would just reach in and be like, "Hey, I haven't forgot about you. Haven't forgot about you." Took him a little longer than expected. He hooked it up. He sent me all these trading cards and cool stuff. And when I came back, it was just one of those promotions I just started to go to and started to follow. And when it got to IWTV, I was able to like watch all its events too. I had purchased some Blu-rays too at the time, which were cool to have too. Like level 1 and 2, I think at the time were out on Blu-ray. Now I think it's up to 4. Um, but then and then I started to sponsor some of their matches during the pandemic era. Again, that's how I found a way to help the industry, but also promote my podcast, which I started in 21, to get eyes and ears on the indie scene. I was looking at different advertisements, Google ads and this ads. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool, but this is gonna just be any old Joe Schmo looking at these ads, and most of them is gonna be like, what up? But then I seen, I was watching shows and I seen, sponsored by ads and that's podcasts. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute now. If I do this, at least the people that my name being mentioned to are all wrestling fans. They're at a show. So even if like 10 of them watch my show, at least it's wrestling fans watching. It's the demo that I want. And I always found it to be the most efficient way to advertise. It's just through sponsorship. Um, but yeah, that changed the way I looked at wrestling. Proving Ground changed the way I looked at wrestling because it brought, like I said, a whole other element into the indie scene. I saw this cool merch coming in, cards, trading cards specifically. I'm an old school fan of media. And when you start seeing all these things come in, and then you start the retro line figures and the cool T-shirts, and it's just everything. It just draws it back into your childhood. You feel giddy again. It's like this is wrestling, yes. And not to mention what he's done with the black box. That's insane. It's like the big projector and everything. It's quite an experience, especially from VIP. I have to say.
Oh, I love all the shows at the Black Boxes. It's definitely an experience that you're not going to forget. It's a more intimate setting, but it also looks like a professional mini arena, and all of the shows at the Black Box are stellar. And if they don't sell out to the point where we're turning fans away, it comes awful close to that. And the Black Box have become like the can't miss shows of the Proving Ground, and it's just a wonderful venue to hold wrestling shows in.
Yeah, it is. I really and it's something special, Especially like I said, when I went to that first show, and I remember sitting in and I'm just seeing these Titantrons on that big screen, and these people got these entrances that are just it was just larger than life. Something I've never seen before in the indie scene. Just blew me away. Like I feel like I'm at like a small WWE house show, like you said.
Exactly.
It made me feel that. And again, I like the VIP because it comes with like a cool blue figure and all this other stuff. But even the seats down below are great. But up top, when you can see like the whole thing and you see it is a beautiful venue. But
It's
that brings me to the point. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, I definitely love the VIP setting. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, where as much as I like the floor seats, my favorite seats in that Lowell Memorial Auditorium are front row balcony because you can just see the whole thing from a bird's eye view.
Yeah, definitely. So at some point, then I'm guessing you transitioned from like in ring into kind of doing commentating. I think you've done some promoting, correct as well.
Yes, I stopped wrestling in 2004 because my mom got sick and my dad got laid off for his job for 20 years, and I need to help out at home. So I stopped wrestling, got a full-time job. I was working, of course, but I had to just kind of put wrestling away. Like I was working to wrestle, but then I had to just stop. I had to kind of work to work to pay the bills to help my parents and everything. And they were very kind, to let me kind of live under their roof for as long as they did. So rent free, until that in 2004 everything kind of hit the fan, and then little by little 2006 everything kind of went into motion. I got back in business with Bob. I met Derek Simonetti, and along the way, I started promoting shows, and I promoted North Shore Wrestling from September 2006 to about March or April of 2009.
Nice, nice. And how was it transitioning into that, doing that kind? Like that's totally different than wrestling. Now you're kind of running it.
Yo, yeah. I mean, you deal with so many different things when you're a promoter. You're wearing so many different hats because you're doing the creative. You're creating the poster. You're getting the posters printed. You're creating the tickets. You're getting the tickets printed. You're talking to people about possible advertising. You're booking talents. You're booking the ring. You're going over who's gonna go win certain matches, lose certain matches. You're dealing with egos, people who don't want to do business, or it could be as simple as I don't want to take a move, or they hold you
I
up.
don't want to lose. Some people don't want to lose.
Oh yeah, and you got some people who will also try to hold you up for money. You got people that will say, "Oh, I can't lose to this person because I'm a champion," in Vermont or Maine somewhere. And I'm thinking, like, okay, it's bad enough you think that, but it's crazy that you're telling me this 10 minutes before your match is about to start. I've had I no joke. I had somebody one time on the very first show that I ever put on that 5 minutes before the show, before their match, they said they couldn't put over the guys they were wrestling. And I explained to them, well, it's the match is getting thrown out. There's no winner, there's no loser. In fact, the idea was the referees are going to be so hell bent on trying to get this brawl under control that the commissioner just says, you know what, heck with it. The battle royal we're going to have later tonight, let's start it now. So, and then it just blends into the battle royal, and these wrestlers still thought that was them losing, and they almost refused to do it. And I just kind of was in a moment where this is my first show. I want everything to go off without a hitch. But if I set this precedent now and just say, okay, you'll win, and then, we'll go into the battle royal, I'm kind of marked that way forever, like it's kind of, everybody's going to think they can start doing that. So I called their bluff, and luckily, I won. Luckily, they didn't um, walk out like they threatened to. They did business when the time came, but just worried about that stuff can definitely stress you out. And there's things you don't think about, when you're
Oh
putting a show
yeah,
together.
I mean everything. The littlest things can be, become the biggest nightmares. And like you said, egos flying. You got a whole locker room of different egos, different people. Not everybody's always friends. They might be friendly to you, but it doesn't mean they're friends with each other. And again, then this one don't want to work with this one. This one don't want to look at this one's face. This one don't want to see that one. No one wants to take this move. This one's one that wants to bleed. This one doesn't want to bleed. It's like everybody has a request, and I get that. It's not easy. It's totally different than just walking in as a wrestler and going, okay, what do I got to do, boss?
So, just to give you a little laundry list of drama from my very first wrestling show, the situation I explained where the two wrestlers didn't want to lose. I had another situation where one wrestler didn't want to take somebody else's finish. They didn't want to lose that way. They just didn't want to take the finish. I had another situation where the ring crew forgot the bell, so we had to do it UFC style, where it's like, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!" Like John McCarthy used to do. My the ring announcer Shane Daly, Ryan Andrews, who was NCW's ring announcer for a long time, I gave him his first ring announcing gig, and he helped me a lot to promote the show. He tripped getting into the ring
Oh no.
and fell right on his face. Glasses tumbled, and everybody started laughing. And I was like, "Oh, this is a great first impression." But lucky for him, he just went with it. And every single time he went back in the ring after, he kind of made it look like he was afraid to go over the ropes and everything. So he turned it into like a little show within the show, and that was pretty
True
cool. But
professional. I have to say, true professional there, right?
absolutely. But when it first happened, I was like, "Oh
Oh,
no!"
it's like a Titus move. It's like, what's this going on here?
Yeah, and then also, one of my vendors quit in the middle of the show because one of the wrestlers' dads was yelling at her because she was trying to charge her money, and he wasn't on the comp list. And he's like, "I am not paying $10 to watch my son wrestle. Do you understand me? Do you understand me? And the vendor was just like, you know what? Screw this. I'm out. And then everything. And then and then the sound person told me when I got to the building, oh, I told you it was one price, but it has to be another price, or I can't unpack the stuff.
Oh,
Um,
Jesus.
yeah. So,
Hostage situation.
and then after it happened, at like a couple of months after the show, um, the I found out the school never got the money for the building rental.
So that kind of
Now,
went missing somewhere down the line.
yeah, so you're probably wondering, how did they not get the building rental fee, Atlee, if you're the promoter, if you paid it? Well, I'll tell you, I was literally going to the bank to get the money, and then the head maintainer called me and said, "Hey, I want to let you know that we really like the show that you guys did, and we really, really want to have you guys come back often. So if you pay me this number, I can explain where the other part went, and you could just keep paying a lower building fee until you start getting more people." Because we drew 103 people, but it was at the high school field house, which is huge. So 100 people looks like 10 people in that building.
Basically, the
But
guy just cut business and cut the other
oh,
people out and just
exactly.
went
So
into business for himself.
I don't know why I'm being vague with the numbers. So the building fee was $600, and then he told me if you give me 300, I can explain where the other 300 went. And I was like, sure. So money order, cashier's check, gave him the $300. Made the mistake of putting it to his name instead of the school's name, and then 2 months later, the school's like, "Hey, where's your fee? Where's our fee?" And I was like, "Oh, I paid so and so." And it's like, "Well, he's retired." And we never saw that money. So I was on Beverly High School's crap list for a while and everything.
It's not your fault. The guy can't, like I said, the guy cut business, cut in and just did business for himself. How are you supposed to know that? How are you supposed to know
Exactly.
who's retiring?
But that
Um,
was all from my very first show.
that's crazy. But you must have liked some part of it because you went back, right? You kept doing
Oh,
it.
oh no, absolutely. It kept on doing it. The experience got better. Just creating something that you love and seeing people react to it. That was the best thing about it. That was my payday. Whether I made money or not, great. But seeing the smiles on people's faces, seeing the reactions, um, that was like my payday. And that brings me to the Elk Mania shows. That was the brainchild of Ryan Andrews, where he kind of came to me and said, "Hey, I want to start doing a wrestling show, but it's all going to be for charity, where we raise money for local charities." And I said, "Okay." He came with the concept. I came up with the name Elk Mania. It was at the Elks Lodge, and we grew little by little. At first, we were doing one charity show a year, then two, then three, then four, and we kept it to 3 or 4 charity shows a year until the pandemic hit. And along the way, Derek Samity started rising with the Proving Ground, and he was going to start doing regular shows, like monthly shows with paying customers. And at the end, Ryan and I just didn't have the bandwidth to really start promoting these shows and booking them and anymore. Um, so I was just like, "Hey, Derek, you want to merge?" And we came to terms, and he got all of our buildings, and everything, and he expanded, doing great business. And now I only have to worry about a couple of things instead of worrying about everything.
Yeah, and I mean, Albania, the name still runs. I've been to one of their shows, I think, and it's just part of, New England wrestling. That's awesome. Like I said, the whole group of you is all reshaped, like I said, kind of what New England wrestling was and is, and just by doing things, like you said, a little bit different. Just going against the grain just a little bit. It's not changing the game. It's not changing the name of the game, but it's just little things that are changing, and those changes kind of just spiraled into bigger things, and all of a sudden you get something really palatable, and it's quite tremendous to see. Like I said, it's kind of unfold because even like the story of Proving Ground, they started very, low and rose and stuff. Every show making it better. Upgrading equipment as they go along, getting better cameras. Now they got probably the best cameras in the industry, and everybody in New England wants Simon Eddie's cameras.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you go to independentwrestling.tv and you look at some of the other shows that are on there, no disrespect to anybody putting forth a great effort to put the shows on, but you look at Derek Simonetti's quality compared to other people's quality, and it's like night and day. Derek blows them away, not just the quality of the camera, but the way the shows are shot, the way they're edited, everything. It's really a polished professional product that Simonetti uploads to independentwrestling.tv, and you see some of the other um, shows that just look like they were dubbed with a VHS.
And
And
it might,
it's
and they
like,
might, and it's crazy because those shows might even have like national talent on them, with all of them like one
exactly,
up, well, one
exactly.
up, and it'll look like you said, like something from the '90s or early 2000s, kind of grainy. People aren't looking all. It's like, what is this? The angles are all weird or too far. You're never getting any close-ups.
Hey, what's crazy is when you see a lot of those shows, they'll have music video packages that open up a show or to hype up a match or close out a show. And instead of just doing enough of the song with enough clips just to get the story, just to get the story over, they have to play the whole freaking song. And it's like, there's no point in doing this. You're just doing slow motion clips to just make sure you make that 5 minute and 17-second runtime on the song. And I'm like, why? Like, cut the song down.
You don't need a theme song for every show.
No, definitely not. But to talk about Proving Ground and how far they've risen and everything, here's the best example I can kind of give as to like how far the Proving Ground has come. As you know, Chase Del Monte is going to be challenging Stephen Less for the Proving Ground Heavyweight Championship at Bad Medicine on September 21st in Beverly, Massachusetts at the Beverly PBD Elks.
Oh
They're
yes, we'll be actually going to be sponsoring that show. We're actually going to have a little booth in the
excellent.
back. We have a little booth in the back, some cool toys, old style merch, and we're going to have some questionnaires for guests and stuff, and kind of make things interactive for some of our viewers.
Nice.
So
And
yeah, we are looking forward to that bad message. And seeing Chase Del Monte's name, I have to say, I was like, wow.
that's the example I'm pointing to, because there is a time where Chase Del Monte wouldn't dream of doing business with somebody like Derek Sabanetti. Not because Derek Sabanetti did anything wrong or did anything bad. As you know, with wrestling, as there is to everything in life, there's levels to this. And as you said earlier on, Proving Ground started off low and rose and rose and rose. And
Chaotic's been
as
around a little bit longer.
a lot
They've had
longer,
a name. They've had WWE people pull. They had Sergeant Banks. All these people. They got a lot of prestige, a school attached to it. There's a lot of
absolutely.
stuff to it. So
But
I mean, I can see somebody snubbing and saying, "Well, hey, I'm way up here. I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry to say no, but it's like,
But the
I
fact that you can no, I agree with everything you said. But the fact that you can rise from somebody that a guy like Chase Del Monte wouldn't even look at to a point where he's now going to wrestle for you. That just speaks volumes as to the work Derek Simonetti and others have done with the Proving Ground.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I've also seen, like, not another thing, I've seen Let's Wrestle championships being defended on the show. Randy
Exactly.
Carver, Limitless Wrestling, way up here, very top-notch promotion. If you go by YouTube, they're like the second best next to Beyond. They get a lot of coverage. But they're also doing like inner workings and stuff, and having a cross title, that's very awesome. Again, they're not going to throw that anywhere. You got to be close to that level to be able to do that. Um, and like I said, when you're watching like IWTV, those videos honestly are like TV quality wrestling, like something you might see Monday night, that you might see on USA. The editing is fabulous. Everything is top notch. There's no, like I said, '90s kind of style of oh, this is not clear or this is clear. Everything's crystal clear.
Oh, absolutely. And Derek kind of prides himself on the quality of the editing and the way the show flows and the image quality and the sound quality and everything. I'm a novice at best when it comes to putting together like editing video and editing images and whatnot. And there'll be something that I'll edit and I'll just be like, hey, Derek, take a look at this. What do you think? And I think I did a pretty decent job, again, with a novice's eye. And then Derek will sometimes tell me, oh, not bad. Here's what you could have done differently. Or sometimes he'll just tell me, it's crap and you're not putting it on my site, you're not putting it on my social media, and but he'll also tell me why it's crap. So he has a sharp eye for that stuff, and it served
But
him and the
sometimes,
proving ground well.
but that's kind of what's needed. You know, you need someone kind of know what works, what's gonna work, what's gonna sell, what is gonna draw people. If something's crap, then why use it? There is people that wouldn't care and probably use the crap, or just say that's the best they can do. Let's just move on and use the crap, and it will only draw so much. But you know, when you got a promoter that cares, and he doesn't just care in himself, he cares about the product and he cares about the people and how it looks. He's gonna push you to the next level to make you kind of do your best work. And if he knows you can do better, he will push you better. And that's good quality to have. Because you want people that can push you in the industry, not push you around, but push you to the next level.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's one of the reasons why Derek and I get along so well, because we definitely have pride in our work. And I compare like having pride in your work to like a restaurant. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever eaten at a restaurant where you sat down, ordered, waiter brings you the food, you take a few bites, and the food's just not bad? It's really bad. In fact, it's so bad that you sit there wondering to yourself, how can anybody have the balls to sell this? Have you ever had that experience?
Unfortunately, I mean, well, not unfortunately, but I actually have to say no. I've actually have only eaten at pretty decent restaurants, but that's only because like I take people's word of advice before I go try something new. And if I don't know anybody that's gone there, I ain't gonna be adventurous. But
Well,
I've seen things. I've watched movies that I've watched like 6 seconds of, and I played video games that aren't even half finished, and say, how the hell did you just sell that for $60? I'm guessing that's kind of the same kind of thing, though.
exactly. And like there's and then with when I was promoting my shows, there are definitely some corners that you have to cut when you're working as an independent wrestling promoter, but there are some corners that I just wouldn't cut because at the end of the day it dilutes the fans experience, and there's just no way I would be proud of putting that type of product out there.
And I
And
think that's what makes differences. I think that's what made a difference in Almania. I think that's what makes a difference in Proving Ground. And even honestly in NCW and other promotions, it's the pride that the promoters and the people take, the wrestlers take, in
and
their work.
And another person I need to give a shout out to is Proving Ground commentator Adam Nessel. He was an important part of the Proving Ground during our formative years, and he was a tremendous help. And uh, how he helped us get to the next level in many, many avenues is something that myself and especially Derek are always going to be appreciative of.
That's great, though. And so where can people find you today? How can people get a hold of you? How can people follow you around? Where can they
You
see
can
you?
you can hit me up on Twitter at Atlee Greene. You can also hit me up on my website at ringsidelogic.com, where I blog about professional wrestling, blog about the hot topics, do show reviews and whatnot. And I can't say the name yet, but I may be making my publishing debut. I've worked for a bunch of different websites over the years, such as One Wrestling, What Culture, Gerwick.net. But I might be published pretty soon in a certain magazine. And I don't want to say any more than that, but that might be coming very soon.
That's awesome. Congratulations on all that takes place. And this is great. Like I said, you guys are all changing the game out there, still continuing to do so. And I couldn't be more appreciative as a fan just to see that kind of effort and quality go into a product. Again, sometimes the indie scene gets kind of frowned upon or snubbed at, saying, oh, it's just low budget, it's low this and low that. But when you go to these shows, it definitely doesn't feel that way. You feel you feel experience, almost even more real than going to, a WWE show. Sometimes I feel like the indie scene can be more real, where when I go to a WWE show, I feel like I'm, in a set somewhere and everything's kind of fake. And then, the indie show, it looks good, it's clean, it's crisp, but it's also very real, close, and tangible. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely, because in an independent wrestling show, you're closer to the action. Where if you go to a WWE show, most of the time they're working for the camera first, audience second. Where you go to independent wrestling show, they're working for the audience first and Derek Simonetti's camera second.
Yeah,
You know, so
it's a different, it's kind of a different set of rules, but I guess as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed the indies more. I've just gotten more appreciative over it than TV wrestling, just because it is more tangible, it is closer. I do feel more power when I go to a show. I am able to sit front row without, $5,000, $6,000 being spent at a time. I can buy a T-shirt for under 50. I can, get an autograph for under 50. I can do those things. I can get photos with, the guys and girls. I can bring my kid right up there and say, hey, look at that guy. He was there. Got to meet Johnny Pierce the other night. After the show, got to congratulate him on his Rumble win. You think I'd be able to do that at, the Royal Rumble? No, I wouldn't be able to walk up and congratulate anybody. And I guess that's the lure for me. I think that's cool. I think that, it makes it more inclusive. Seeing fans, seeing everybody just kind of get involved, and really be able to, tell the wrestler, hey, we appreciate you. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for your match. You look, good out there. That's all important stuff on the scene to kind of get people over. And I think it's just really a cool thing.
well, what's equally important is people like yourself giving people on the independents a platform to kind of tell their story and share their experience and promote and plug upcoming events. You know, so definitely give yourself a pat on the back too, because what you do is also important. And I thank
Thank
you
you. I
for having me on the
appreciate
show.
that. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I think that's the great part of social media. It's the good side. There is a dark side of social media, but the good side is that you are able to use it as a positive platform to promote independent wrestling events, talent, people, persona, anything you really want in a positive way if you want to do it positive. And that's why I like to keep it. But I do thank you as coming on as my guest, and I thank you everybody watching at home. And as always, support indie wrestling. Versace Stoner out.